having a series of conversations with recruitment leaders talking about the impact of AI on employer branding. I'm here with Liz Dreyer. Liz,
Hi.
wonderful to see you.
Nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
Liz, can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah, I'm Liz. I work at Qualtrics and I'm an employer brand strategy manager.
Artificial intelligence, what is the impact of AI to the thinking that EB leaders have got to kind of now put into place? Both kind of the diffusion of artificial intelligence in the wider population, but also within sort of EB function and how we're using the technology to potentially support our storytelling. How do you see the technology? How do you see the moment?
I think that this is like a really pivotal moment in our space in general. I think it's sort of like the get on the train because it's already left the station. In so many ways, I think that if I were to have to categorize it into a couple of different spaces, I would say, one, we have to change the way that we're showing up for our candidates. They're inherently looking for jobs in a very different way, and so we have to show up in different spaces than we have historically because AI is looking for these more relevant and proven sources, right? So they're looking at review sites in a lot different than they used to. We might have been able to deprioritize some of those things, and now they're at the top of the priority list. The way that we tell stories has to change. The way that we inherently write a blog to be AI enabled versus being able to tell a story in a way that we were able to before is very different. I also think that we had a really powerful discussion the other day around where our skill sets lie. I think that my most exciting place where AI is coming into play is looking at the skill sets that we have across EB teams. They're historically so small and under-resourced, but we have this world of opportunity in front of us by being able to look at where our skill sets really strong and where do we have opportunities. We all have them, but AI is an area that we can pull that in and say, okay, we don't have somebody that has a bunch of time to write, for example, or we don't have somebody that's a data wizard on our team, and you're able to use AI to be able to fill in those gaps and be able to 10x your team's impact because you're able to use AI to be able to fill in the missing pieces.
Yeah, I think just I can't remember the study, but people are talking about where AI is currently being most used, and it kind of does fall within number one, software engineering. So that's like well integrated now in terms of how software people produce code. But number two is the marketing, storytelling, content marketing group, because obviously suddenly we've got this immense productive capacity that we didn't have before. And how you kind of, I guess the skill set has shifted from being a person that's able to type it all out to a person that's able to prompt the story out and then be able to curate it and shape the story such that it's reflective of brand and what you want to say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are really lucky where we have we're an AI business, and one of our leaders has really inspired us from the engineering side. I love that you said like the way that engineering has changed. They've got this thing called vibe coding. And vibe coding is like, I want to build this and it should look like this and it should do this. And then it spits out the code for you, which is really cool. And I think that there's a way that we can do vibe coding on our side of things as branders, where it's like, these are our brand guidelines. This is what our voice sounds like. This is what we want to do. This is a story I want to tell. And then you just kind of tell it what it needs to do and be able to provide it the prompt that it needs to be really successful. But the fact that you can just basically just like stream of consciousness it and not have to make everything so structured. And we're moving from this, like, I need to send you a formal like prep deck, or I need to send you this like really formal pitch on something, to being able to be like, no, I'm just going to vibe it. And then it's going to do all of the like hard work to be able to put it into a really beautiful package for somebody else to consume. It does that for you. I think that that's really cool too.
Liz, real talk.
Yeah.
How has the impact of AI then changed your thinking with regards to the sorts of skills that you need in the team? Like, have certain skills been deprioritized because AI can take on a lot of the workload? And have other skills kind of increased because actually, with AI doing a lot of the lifting, now we need this thing now more than before?
No, I think of it like my little employee, where it's like, I think that we still bring really great skill sets to the table. And I think that we all have different strengths that we're able to like double down on and then say, okay, now I'm going to have my little AI agent employee go do the stuff that I don't like to do, or that doesn't bring me energy or things like that. And so I think it's actually able to enhance the things that you do as opposed to take away from it. So I think it gives us a really good opportunity to say, okay, there's so many different things that we talk about in the employer brand space. Like, where do I actually want to focus? And where do I want to spend the most time? Where can I make the biggest impact? And how do I 10x that impact?
Yep.
As opposed to it's going to take away something. I think you have to look at it as like enhancing.
Yeah, and you know what? That's just not happy talk. That is actually some very good scientific evidence here with regards to, how people are very good editors of output or curators of output. Actually, themselves usually are domain experts in the space. So you have to be a good writer to know what is bad copy that AI might generate. And
it'll spit it out, and you'll look at it and be like, "That's not us," right? And like as a brand, it's like you. And now, granted, you can coach it and get it there, but you have to know to coach it, right?
Yeah.
And so there's very rarely been a time when I've gotten it 100% correct, where I'm like, I want you to write this, but it gives like a really good starting point, and I'm spending time on editing as opposed to having to like curate from scratch.
Yeah.
Or as we're doing a podcast, for example, like what question should I ask? It doesn't mean that it's replacing us having a conversation, but it might have give me something different to think about, or a different question to ask, or a different probe, or something like that, where it's just making our conversation so much more impactful. It's not going to replace the human connection, but it's going to enhance it and let us focus on making the connections that are deeper and more meaningful from that.
Yeah. You mentioned podcasts. We have to go there.
Yeah, let's go there.
So you run an internal podcast.
I do.
Can you tell us like how that emerged as a thing? Because it's still quite rare, in my opinion, for a company to have an internal podcast and also to put it externally. So what's the origin story behind this?
So it's not fully, we haven't figured out all the kinks, right? But it's new. We've released 4 episodes for it. We're really excited about it. But what we were doing is, as we were looking at different ways to storytell and to make connections with our external audience, we were saying that a podcast would be a really great opportunity to get to know our leaders and to be able to understand their domain expertise and what makes them who they are and why you would want to work on those managers. You look at work for those managers. You look at the old days of Facebook, and like people would flock to these leaders at Facebook because they were who they were. And it's like, how do we do a little bit of that and be able to improve our brand? And we're like, a podcast would be a really cool way to do it. It's an emerging space. It's video. It's talking. It's all the things, and people can listen on their time. And so we were like, we should do something like that. But then it very quickly turned into, man, we really need something like this on the internal side of things too, to be able to get to know our leaders, to humanize them, to build trust, to be able to say, these are people that are in the weeds with us making these decisions. And this is really important for not only building our external brand, but making sure that it feels like that internally too. You can't ever go out with an inauthentic message, right? So it's like, this is just as good for the inside as it is the outside. So what we've been able to do is actually flip it on its head and have an internal first mindset, where it's like, let's get the internal folks what they need. And then what we do is we take snackable bite-sized pieces and we send it outside to be able to connect with our candidates as well. And that's basically because, you can't like have like a full unfiltered conversation about not public information, obviously. So what we're able to do is go completely unfiltered internally, and then take the stuff that really would resonate the most with candidates and give them in a way that's like more consumable, which we're seeing is super important, as you know, externally too.
That's fantastic. I love the fact that you're making multiple sort of outputs from doing a single conversation. I can totally imagine how enriching for the culture that is to see some leadership figures actually talk about their work or even talk about themselves in this context. And of course, those like 30-second clips, 15-second clips, that could be gold as recruitment marketing.
Yeah. I think it's like going back to the AI conversation, even just being able to like put your transcript in and say, okay, this is what we're trying to achieve with this content, and be like, okay, where do we see sound bites based off of what our EVP is and what's most important to us. And then I'm able to send it to our social media manager and say, okay, this is some of the stuff that you should pay attention to. And I don't have to go back and like rewatch it a million times to be able to timestamp it. And like, just like even the time savings of that is like super helpful.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the work in reviewing sort of podcasts was always just listening to it. But these days you can transcribe it out, and then the AI can pick out what it thinks is the best thing. And it's nearly there. I mean, it's not
Yeah,
100%, but it's not far off.
totally. It gives you a starting point, and at least you're listening more for the more human aspects of it, where you have like you don't have to listen to the whole entire.
What's your favorite question when you're doing the podcast? Like, what's the you go to?
So we are really inspired by the amazing Brene Brown, and she has at the end of every podcast she does like her Fast Five, and so we totally took her Fast Five questions because they're golden. And the one that my favorite, where I get the most insight about our leaders, is what's a lesson that the world keeps putting in front of you that you keep having to learn?
Wow.
And it just gives the most human answers, and it just really kind of gets to the heart of who they are. And I think it's just a really powerful question.
And when you have questions that stimulate that authentic response, you can't really fake that.
No.
And that's what people really want. They want that authenticity. What is the one thing in the EB world that you kind of disagree with that is still like a consensus view? Is there like a marginal position that you have on sort of the world of EB and you think,
yeah, like
I've
a
got this-
spicy opinion about the EB space? I think that there's this perception that because we aren't oftentimes in the brand or marketing organization, that we don't do quality work. And I have seen some of the most organized, data-driven, creative brand campaigns come out of the talent space that would put some consumer brands to shame. And so I think that we're kind of the dark horses, but I think that we're really impactful and we're doing really cool work. And I really hate the folks that think that we're not up to par with the consumer marketing folks, because I think that we're doing really, really cool stuff.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
One word of advice that you have to a TA or EB leader in 2025, like what kind of thing that they've got to do to prepare for their talent brands in 2026?
Oof. I mean, I hate to go the AI route, but I think that you've got to invest in AI. I think that you're going to find so much efficiency in your day-to-day. I think that it's going to push you to ask questions differently, to be able to storytell in a different way. And bottom line, candidates are showing up in different spaces than they were before. And some of the places that we didn't put an emphasis or a priority are going to have to be prioritized right now. So I think that it's kind of like the get on board now type of a thing, if you're not already.
That's it. That needs to be double clicked and underlined.
Yeah.
It's locked.
Yeah. Bold. Word art.
That's it. Liz Dreyer, thank you so much for your time.
you.
I want to let you go so you can enjoy the rest of this
I
wonderful
appreciate it. Thanks for doing this. It was
Brilliant.
good to meet you.